Welcome back to another edition of the podcast, and tonight is our Gameweek 12 National League preview and predictions. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Paul Franklin. Paul, firstly, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm good, thank you, Luke. I'm fresh off a plane from New Orleans. I got home about 2:15 this afternoon, so ready for the weekend's action.
Yeah, you certainly will be. I think Wealdstone, I'm trying to think now, they've got, is it Tamworth, I think, on Saturday, which will be coming on to preview?
No, they got Eastleigh at home.
Eastleigh at home on Saturday. Of course, you've made a new addition today that I'm sure we'll come on to very shortly too. Yeah, I'm into my second week at university now, and I suppose it's kind of catching up with me. I've got the so-called freshers flu anyway. So yeah, that's not the pleasantest experience for myself. But we move on. We still have to bring the podcasts out. And I just want to say, a massive thank you to York City as well. Of course, on Tuesday evening, I got the opportunity, me and my mate, who's very good with the camera, got the opportunity to go pitch side at York City to create, I think, a match day vlog of the York City versus Carlisle United game. And, you know, to be able to have that access is just excellent. And to be honest, I wish more clubs would do that and give, you know, content creators, particularly small content creators like myself, you know, the access to be able to do that. And the more I think of it, I think it probably works in football clubs' favour, particularly when they're doing well, like York City at the moment, because, you know, people are able to document what's really going on there in terms of all the positivity. And that is something I thought I could tell. You can tell they're a club on the up at the moment. You know, everyone was so positive. The staff were extremely friendly. Stewards as well. You know, stewards, I think, across the board have kind of got this reputation, haven't they, to be quite forceful and a little rude at times. Whereas at York, all the stewards to us, considering me and my mate's first time doing anything like that, were very friendly and very helpful as well. So a massive credit to York City. And yeah, I think York City's a football club, to be fair to them, on Tuesday night, were excellent and treated me, our cameraman, very well. So yeah, but no, of course, there's lots to discuss tonight. Get your thoughts in the comments on things you'd like to discuss. We'll start things off and see who's in tonight first. Theodore is in first. He said, "Evening, son. Welcome to the stream." We've also had Ben, who said, "Evening, chaps. Welcome to the stream." Ben. Caroline's coming, who, of course, is a channel member, saying, "Good evening. Not a good Wednesday evening." Of course, the Aldershot fan there. And then John's come in, say, "Good evening. Great evening tonight. Alex Hunt and Ollie Pearce signed new contracts tonight." And I think, yeah, we're going to come on. I think a perfect way to start is to reflect on Tuesday and Wednesday night's fixtures. And I think one game that I kind of specifically talk about, considering I was at the game, and I think it probably was the game of the game week, is the York City versus Carlisle United game. Of course, it was York City 5, Carlisle United 0. Paul, what's your thoughts on that overall?
Well, I must admit, I don't think anyone would have seen that scoreline coming, would they, Luke? I've seen Carlisle play, and they've got their offensive line is unbelievable. I think there was probably a suggestion that their defensive unit wasn't quite as good as some of the other teams up at that top end of the table. It's proven that, you know, Stuart Maynard, the way that he plays his tactics, if he's got a really good forward line, then, you know, they get the balls into the box a lot. They get into the last third a lot. They're going to take their, you know, they've got someone who can take their chances, like Ollie Pearce, and Stone's got on the score sheet as well. So, yeah, a massively unusual scoreline. I mean, I think I spoke to a York fan, actually, a friend of mine who's a colleague, and he said, you know, from minute one they were just brilliant, and they just obviously shocked Carlisle. I don't know what car you were there, Luke. You know more than I do about how the actual game panned out, but Carlisle must have just been bamboozled by what had happened and just couldn't really recover from it. And, you know, I think in isolation, a 5-0 win to York is a big statement. You know, Carlisle haven't got to panic. and York have got to just follow that up with another massive game on Saturday against Forest Green Rovers. So, a great advert for the National League to have two top teams going for it, and one of them really sort of playing well as well.
It wasn't a freak result either, which is what's probably more concerning for Carlisle United. I don't think it's a game for me where it's like, we've lost, we can put it behind us now, those results happen. They were absolutely battered in every area of the football pitch. And for me, I think kind of brought up my concerns about Carlisle United in recent weeks, and probably I think we both have. And we've often got a bit of stick, I suppose, from Carlisle United supporters saying, we're second in the league. Why is there this much negativity? But there's certain areas for me within that Carlisle United squad that the better teams will take the chances against. For example, I'm not disputing that Carlisle United's forward line isn't a title contending forward line, which it is. But that's the only area of the pitch that could probably compete with a York or a Rochdale. And we saw last night on the night they couldn't. York found it very easy. They were very kind of predictable, I suppose, because of Regan Linney, who, to be fair, has been the centrepiece to Carlisle this season. They've been very reliant on him and potentially Luke Armstrong as well for the goals. And those two were just marked out of the game, particularly Regan Linney, who got a lot of stick as well from the York City fans. And it was, I think, an evening to forget for him. But in terms of the midfield, they were losing the battle in every area. They couldn't string two passes together. As soon as they tried to play through the middle, Carlisle United, York City just, won the ball back instantly from them. And I don't even want to get started on the defence. It was just awful defending. It was basic defending that they weren't actually doing. And I've said all season, that I want to see Carlisle United's defence come up against a good or an excellent attack like York City's to be actually tested. Because prior to that game, it did feel like they turned a bit of a corner. But if you look at the teams that Carlisle have actually beaten at the moment, the teams that either are defensive-minded teams that are looking to win games 1-2-0 by sitting back and catching Carlisle United on the break, which, to be fair to Carlisle in previous weeks, hasn't worked. They've been able to break them down and win quite comfortably. Or it's teams that simply don't have strong enough attacks to be able to cause Carlisle any issues. Now, the other night, York had an attack that caused Carlisle United's issues, and I think highlighted a lot of problems there. And for me, it's not one-off night. I genuinely think they need to be looking to recruit in the midfield and the defence if they wanting to be in this title race. And from what I saw on Tuesday night, I'm not even 100% sure that they'll make the playoffs this season. I still think they will, but I don't think they'll be in the top three or in a title race at all.
That's a bold statement, Luke. That's a very bold statement. I mean, yeah, listen, you've got to just they can't panic. I know what you're saying, and someone as experienced as Mark Hughes can now look at that and say, right, we've come up against a big team in the league. We know what York are like. They're the favourites, or if not one of the favourites. So I'm not sure he'll be too worried in that sense, because I think he'll know what to go and recruit potentially. But yeah, I mean, it was just he would have learned more about his players, I think, in losing 5-0 than winning 5-0. Let's put it that way. And at the moment, what you don't want to do is start to drop away from the top 2 or 3. If Forest Green still winning, Rochdale had a great win in the week as well. Obviously York did. So Boreham Wood are consistently playing well. So someone like Carlisle can't afford to drop off the pace too early. I mean, there's loads of twists and turns. We know that. We've seen that with the National League over the last few years since we've been commenting on it on a weekly basis. But yeah, I think they should start to panic if they get a few more of these types of results. If they don't respond Saturday, as an example, they've got a really tough one Saturday playing Rochdale. So, they're not going to be wanting to go into that on the back of a 5-0 defeat. So yeah, I mean, they'll work hard on the training ground this week, no doubt, Luke. Mark Hughes would, and they probably all have watched that video back of that performance, because it's something that will have to be analysed. But I think at the moment they can't panic. Let's just see how they respond. I would suggest would be the best thing about it.
I'd be panicking if I were them. And I know results-wise, you're going to say you can't just go off that one game. But if you look at the previous games where they've been winning games, which, you have to beat what's in front of you, and they have done that. They've not slipped up in any of the games against the likes of, Truro, Brackley, Braintree or Aldershot. However, those sides don't have attacks, maybe apart from Aldershot, maybe, but even then it's not to the same extent as York. Have attacks that are actually going to be able to cause Carlisle any issues, because Carlisle will be able to dominate the football in those games. As soon as they've come up against a team that is looking to compete for the title with them, which is Carlisle United's aim, we know that they want to win the title. They've been completely outclassed, to be honest. It wasn't a case of them losing 2-1 and, it could have gone either way, or it was even a draw where we were like, I think both sides are going to get better. For me, one side was significantly better and the other side was a lot worse. And I'm telling you this now, the only way Carlisle United will be in a title race this season, in my opinion, is by recruiting heavily more in the defensive positions. Of course, I know Feeney needs to come back, and when he comes back, he's meant to be this kind of standout marquee centre-half, so he may make a difference. But not just him, in the midfield areas as well. They signed, I think it's Gilead, who they signed. I know him from when he was at Bradford. I'm trying to think who he previously. He went somewhere else before I went to Carlisle. He was non-existent in the midfield, and he's recently signed. So they probably need 3 or 4 marquee players, in my opinion, for them to be able to compete for the title this season. And for me, I think, they've got a lot of money. We're aware of that. But are they going to be able to find these marquee players? That's going to be the question, isn't it?
Well, that's the thing. They'll have the structure. They'll have the infrastructure. They've got the fan base. It depends how much they want to invest, and it depends how much they want to trust someone like Mark Hughes, whoever the manager is, to reinvest with players that hopefully improve the squad. I think you're right, though, Luke. The problem comes is even now we're looking at players who aren't on contract anywhere, haven't got a club. They're starting to find clubs. The players out there are going to be less available. It's going to be less available. The quality that they require is probably going to be less available. They then might come as a premium because they're going to have to go to another club and purchase them. Maybe is the loan market something they can explore like many National League teams do once all these EFL and Premier League teams have settled their squads and are out of EFL cups and trophies and all sorts, and they need their players to go and play games. That then might help support and supplement what they already have. But I think that's a fair observation, in much as look who Carlisle have played, and when they have come up against someone half decent, they got absolutely thumped. That might be a cause for concern. I saw them play down at the Vale against Wealdstone. Wealdstone were on a good run of form at the time. They're not going to be one of the strongest teams in the league. We know that. And Wealdstone competed, and it really was only those 2 up top that made the difference at times. So I get what you're saying in terms of once they come up against someone who's a big team, and another test on Saturday, like I said, Rochdale, is where do we go from there, and how do they respond to that?
Well, if you actually look at Carlisle's next 4 fixtures, they've got Rochdale, they've got Scunthorpe, and they've also got Forest Green as well. And I think there's another one in there who they've got to play as well, who you expect to be up there. And those sides are certainly going to test them based on their runs of form at the moment. And maybe it's harsh to say on one game. I genuinely think they're going to struggle in these next few games, and potentially going forward, I think the sides potentially that aren't going to be in the playoffs will probably find them out as well, because of how these better sides play against them. For example, Regan Linney, it was very obvious what Carlisle United were trying to do on Tuesday night was just get the ball to Regan Linney and he will make things happen. All York City did, which is quite simple, to be fair, tactically. Obviously, it's a lot hard for the players to actually do. It's not an easy job, but tactically, it's quite easy to implement, is to put 2 men on Regan Linney. And that's exactly what York City did. They frustrated him, and, he ended up, causing fouling players, getting frustrated, and Carlisle actually subbed him off in the second half, I think after like 60, 65 minutes or so. And that's meant to be the star man. As for Luke Armstrong, I felt a bit sorry for him because I don't think he got the service in the game because the midfield was abysmal, if I'm being honest. So for me, I genuinely think that, the smaller sides in the division will be able to find him out and probably be looking to put 2 men on the likes of Regan Linney, and the midfielders aren't good enough to be able to step up, even though they'll have more space if they do that. And that's clearly what happened on Tuesday night. So I think if Carlisle want to be in this title race, for me, they've got to be looking at bringing in more reinforcements. One of those is Chris Clark in that number 10 position. I've just mentioned there about Regan Linney putting 2 men on him. That leaves a man free in the midfield, in the attacking midfield role. And if you've got someone like Chris Clark there, that's a player that on his he has proven he can be equally as good as someone like Regan Linney in his respected position. They probably also need to be looking at a defensive midfielder and I think 1 or 2 centre halves as well. So there's a lot of areas for me I think Carlisle need to be looking to invest in. And of course, we do know they've got money, but like I've said, it's a lot harder than it looks. Coming on to York City, though, a statement win for them, particularly after slipping up in the previous game week against Solihull Moors. A good reaction, I think, for them to, of course, put Carlisle United to the sword like they did. They've also got some good news that's come out of the club this afternoon as well. Of course, Alex Hunt, Ollie Pearce and now Joe Felix have all signed new contract extensions for the football club. How significant is that for York City, Paul?
I mean, it's huge in as much as there's obviously a feeling amongst those players that they're signing contracts because they're going places. These are players that could go in the EFL. If they have another good season with York, rather, January the transfer window comes, teams will be sniffing about. What it appears to me is they've now got trust in York City Football Club, Stuart Maynard, whoever else that supports Stuart, in as much as, well, actually, I will get to the EFL with us. Let's go. Let's go and do it. So that's where I think it's a great bit of business for York. One, if they do have unbelievable seasons, they're going to cost money for whoever wants to sign them. But I think more importantly, they're now looking at it and saying, let's sign these contracts and let's get to the Football League with the team that we play for. And it just knocks away any of the rumours and any of those that believe that they're in the know that Pearce is going here and Felix is going there and Alex Hunt, after 4 or 5 really good games, other teams will start looking at them. All that can go to the side now, because if you want to sign them, it's going to cost you money. They're probably going to put big prices on their heads potentially, so they can now just concentrate on getting York promoted to the Football League. And they'll want to do it with York. So great bit of business, little bit of stability. That will then give others confidence to want to sign contracts if they wanted to be kept by York. It'll also make other players go, actually, I want to join York as well. So it would just breed confidence. And great, what a great week for them. 5-0 against one of their title contenders. 3 really good players put on longer term contracts going into a really tough game on Saturday against Forest Green Rovers.
Of course, it's been, like I've said, a great couple of days for them defeating Carlisle United. Of course, they're coming up against Robbie Savage's Forest Green Rovers on Saturday. It's getting to a point in the season now where there's a lot of mouth-watering fixtures. I think the York Carlisle United one was the first fixture of the season where everyone was probably drawn to it because before ball were kicked, those were the 2 favourites to win the league on paper. Of course, previous to that, we had York Southend, but it didn't really live up to the expectation. But on Saturday anyway, York v Forest Green we've got Scunthorpe versus Southend, and we've got Rochdale versus Carlisle as well. They're 3 key fixtures, and I'm sure there's a few more in there that kind of interest me as well, because I think they'll be quite entertaining too. So we should hopefully be having a good game week coming up. Coming on to Yeovil Town then, it's certainly been a chaotic week for them. Danny Webb recently parted ways with Yeovil Town due to family reasons and health. Danny took charge of just 1 fixture for the Glovers, losing 1-0 to Tamworth. Chris Todd, assistant, was also dismissed from Yeovil. I believe he's actually gone to Eastleigh to be the new executive there. Football director, I should say. Richard Dryden, though, took charge of the fixture against Aldershot, and surprisingly, they won 4-1 away at the Shots. It's certainly been a chaotic week for Yeovil Town, but I suppose for them, some good news and a bit of a shock, I suppose, going to Aldershot and putting 4 past them away from home.
Another, as York winning 5-0 was a bit of an eye opener. I think Yeovil, like you said, Luke, having the week or the couple of weeks they've had, get rid of Mark Cooper, bring in Danny Webb. Danny Webb is there for 1 game. He goes, his assistant goes. They put Dryden back in. I think Yeovil fans are a little bit dismayed that, why are they sticking with Dryden? Is there any ambition? Because they overlooked him the first time when Webb had come in. They've now got Dryden in, and they go and thump Shots 4-1. Look, we all know the problem with Shots is they let goals in. They're the league entertainers, aren't they? The goals for and the goals against is just through the roof with Aldershot. But you would never expect Yeovil, I think, to score 4 goals. I mean, Aldershot will probably be one of the teams that you'd be wanting to score 4 goals against, because they do play such open football. But Yeovil struggle to score goals generally. They have done over the last few years. So to win 4-1, a very, very unexpected win. Hopefully that gives Richard Dryden a little bit of confidence in the team he has. He'll obviously know them because he worked under Mark Cooper and would have helped with that recruitment and knew what was coming pre-season. So I think the continuity, that will probably help Yeovil in the long term, even if it's not the most, the sexiest appointment in the world in terms of what Yeovil fans are expecting. And also, hopefully, it just gives the fans a little bit of confidence in Richard Dryden to say, look, let's just back him. Let's see where we go with this. I know we've got the Junior Marias fan club online, and he's very much up for Yeovil. And there's been suggestions that Yeovil might do very well in the next couple of, next season. But it just really depends where they go. They've just got to settle down now, Luke. They had problems over the last couple of years of ownerships. Mark Cooper navigated them through that, which was fine. They changed course. They got a new owner. Now they've got this manager issue. So I think for Yeovil's perspective, they just need a few months of just a bit of stability. Let's just get on with this, and let's just see where we end up in the National League, and then maybe take it from there. But brilliant win for them against the Shots on was it Tuesday night?
Yeah, it certainly was. And like I've said, it kind of surprised me a lot, particularly I think there's been quite a lot of negativity in the last week. However, what I will say, when I've seen a lot of comments online, a lot of, I suppose, frustration has been directed to, the Yeovil board. It was actually Danny Webb who chose to leave. And it wasn't due to, as far as we're aware, based on the statement, it wasn't due to a falling out or anything like that. It was just due to circumstances changing with family. And to be fair, these things do happen. I know it's frustrating, but I think from both parties, by the sounds of it, there was nothing either could have done about it. And, all the Yeovil ownership need to do now is either keep Richard Dryden on or find a good replacement. Of course, this is something else that I liked about the new Yeovil ownership as well, is that they actually released a visual statement, not just a written statement, a visual one on Twitter. The executive chairman, Stuart Robbins, came out and released a visual statement apologising to the fans and ensuring that supporters that they are currently looking to strengthen the squad. That's something as well, that transparency between the fans and the ownership is the fact that, fans have been demanding that we need more bodies through the door. And the ownership have actually come out and said, we've increased the budget now and we're going to go out and try to bring in more quality players.
Yeah, I think they need to do it because it's, they don't want to be seen like they've made a mistake. We have no idea why Danny Webber's left, citing family reasons, health reasons. And, let's hope that it works out for the best for him, because that was a big decision to leave the comfort zone of Chesterfield. And we talked about, going out on his own and wanting to be a manager. And he's lasted 10 days. And for whatever reason, he's decided that it's not for him. And that's fair enough. So, wish him the best of luck in the future. And now Yeovil have got to concentrate on them. And I think, that safe pair of hands of Richard Dryden, who knows the clubs. I think more importantly, he knows the squad. I think that's, like I said, he knows the squad. He knows what he's got now. And he can just get on with that and maybe improve on what he feels he can do in terms of what Mark Cooper was doing, and just let them get on with it. They've got Junior Marias, they've got Tavon Campbell up top. They've got some proven National League quality in the forward lines, which will probably help them, because they've never been too bad defensively. So you never know, you might see a different way of playing from Yeovil, and because of that, they might be open to scoring more goals, and because of that, they'll end up further up in the playoffs. So yeah, let's just see how they get on and just have that level of stability. But because I think their fans just want it now.
Ben's coming in also said Aldershot must have been bad if Tavon Campbell is scoring. Well, to be fair to Tavon Campbell, that's the first time this season he has scored, but he did score 2 goals in this fixture. And for him, I think throughout his career as a footballer, he's been very hit and miss, and it's all, I see him as a confident striker. I think, when he's on a good run of form, he can be prolific for sides. I think I remember his time at, when he's previously been at the likes of Woking, I think was probably where he stood out after he left Halifax. And, for the first half of the season, he was excellent for them before, I believe, moving to Rochdale, where it didn't particularly work out. I think at the Stones as well, he wasn't, awful. I think he did a decent job for you, as well as what he did for Solihull Moors as well in that first season for them. So, yeah, he's very hit and miss, but there's potential there. I think he's proven in the past, he's got into double digits in the season, in the first half of the season as well. And, if a manager at Yeovil can get the best out of him, he is a tidy striker, in my opinion.
No, I agree. And, I think Richard Dryden may get the best out of them. Tavon Campbell needs to be playing. He needs to stay injury-free. He needs to be playing games. All strikers are generally form players that, getting a couple of goals, however they go in, however they're scored. Once they've done that, then, sometimes you see a bit of a purple patch from them. So, yeah, I think having Campbell and Marias is the same. He needs games. Didn't play a lot on Notts County. Went to Daggers last year on loan. Got recalled, and so he's had a bit of a stop-start season and a half himself. So those two, they just need to be playing. They're still in full-time football. They'll get themselves fit, and I think they've got quite a good sort of forward pair in there if that they can get the service.
I totally agree with you. I actually thought in the summer, Yeovil's recruitment, they recruited quite smart. Defensively last season, it didn't seem to be an issue for them at all. It was just a lack of goals going forward. And I think they addressed that area by bringing in the likes of Junior Marias and Tavon Campbell up top, alongside Daly as well, who came in that attacking midfield role. So, for me overall, I thought the recruitment in the summer was pretty good. And, if they're still looking to add, which they certainly are based on the statement that the Yeovil chairman put out, then to be fair, Yeovil could really, I don't think their season's over in terms of the playoffs. Of course, it's an outside shot now, I suppose, because you see how other sides have started. But, it is a long season and a lot of things can change within a season. And I think based on that result the other night and the fact that they're looking to strengthen, if they keep riding or if they get this appointment right and it works, then, potentially Yeovil could still be within or at least on the fringes of the playoffs come the end of the season, which I think is where they're kind of aiming for this season as the owners and as a football club.
Yeah, completely. all these clubs just need a bit of stability and just a bit of consistency on and off the field, just to see where they can end up. Notwithstanding, quality in recruitment, but like I said, I think Yeovil were heading in the right direction. Maybe not always playing the most attractive brand of football and everything else that comes with it, but I think they'll be okay. They're not going to go down, and they could start challenging potentially. And there's a few teams in the league, and we talk about managers that they're struggling a lot more than Yeovil are at the moment. So they'll be fine. They're playing Altrincham at home on Saturday. That'll be a good game for them to get their teeth into, and hopefully they'll get there for Yeovil fans. They get a bit of consistency now, and like I said, and a bit of stability.
Going on to the Spitfires then, Eastleigh have found their new first-team manager in Scott Bartlett, who has been headhunted from Western-super-Mare after they had a 7-game win streak. Scott had managed Super-Mare for the previous 5 years, so it wouldn't have been he wouldn't have took this decision lightly at all. Of course, he actually had a previous spell before that where he was there for 3 years, from I think like 2015 or 2014 to 2017 as well. So yeah, a big decision for him to make, of course, stepping up a division. And I suppose it's kind of an opportunity for him that he couldn't turn down. And he's already got off to a good start. I know he wasn't actually in the dugout, but his side, I should say, has got off to a good start by beating one of the favourites in Southend last night, or on Tuesday night.
I know, yeah. And another result that we probably wouldn't have expected, Luke, if we were doing the predictions. I certainly wouldn't have put that down for Eastleigh to be beating Southend. Although, that new manager bounce we talked about. Interestingly, what I found with the Eastleigh move is Scott Bartlett was heavily sort of tipped to, was he going to go and get the Yeovil job? The locality obviously made sense. He wasn't given the Yeovil job, so have Eastleigh approached Scott Bartlett now, or Scott Bartlett gone and looked and seen, right, I want to get into National League? We'll never know. But the move of Chris Todd leaving Yeovil to go to Eastleigh at exactly the same time. So I don't know. Some of those that are closer to those clubs will know, is there a relationship between Chris Todd and Scott Bartlett? Has Chris Todd had influence on getting Scott Bartlett in, knowing he was going to be the director of football? So an interesting double move there. Chris Todd moving away from an assistant manager role, sort of being on the sideline, going up into the offices, if you like, and away from the coaching field. So yeah, an interesting week for Eastleigh, restructuring everything and getting a great result against Southend. Something they probably needed. And we know Eastleigh can be hugely good and they can be hugely bad. We do, there's no in between with them. They're just very inconsistent. Unfortunately, being a Wealdstone fan, the worst time to play them. We play them on Saturday at home. They're going to be full of confidence. New manager, new director of football. So they're going to be hoping they're sort of heading in the right direction in terms of where they want to go in the league.
Personal thoughts then on him being appointed as the new manager? I don't think either of us really predicted that, did we? We didn't really put him in the hat of names that could have.
Well, no, not really. I think locality-wise is one, but also, like you said, Luke, he's done a fantastic job at Western-super-Mare. They seem to be pushing and going further up National League South and knocking on the door of getting into the National League. But at the end of the day, Eastleigh are potentially a bit of a sleeping giant. They don't have a huge fan base, we know that, but it's a tidy little football club. It's well backed, off the field. It's well run. They just need something, some sort of spark now to get them going and get the best out of the squad that they've got. So I think Scott Bartlett will look at that and say, I'm the man that can do that. All footballers and managers will always back themselves. They'll be 100%. I know I can make that player better. I can make that team better. I could play in that team. And he's got to be looking at that and thinking, this is a great opportunity for me. So, fair play to him. A good appointment for Eastleigh to give a manager in the league below that opportunity. We talked about it last week. Let's just put them, think outside the box. Let's just not go with a tried and tested method all the time. Fortunately for Yeovil, it didn't seem to work with Danny Webb, so they're going to have to go back to the drawing board. Let's hope the same doesn't happen for Eastleigh. But I do think it's a refreshing appointment, and I wish Scott Bartlett the best of luck after Saturday.
Bedstone's come in and also said, he said, good appointment for Eastleigh though, well backed, and he's overachieved at Western-super-Mare. For me, I like the fact that Eastleigh haven't gone down the previous route of bringing in a name as such. We've mentioned this, haven't we, that, Davis potentially didn't have much experience in actual management at all. And I always go back to the point of, well, they need to get experience somewhere. But I don't potentially think Eastleigh are in a position now where they should be taking gambles on, big names potentially from higher divisions who are looking to get into management. Bringing someone in who's come up through the divisions, knows the division as well from his time at Forest Green. For me, overall, I think it makes perfect sense. And, he's on a good winning streak at the moment. Well, previously has been when he was at Western-super-Mare, done an excellent job there, overachieved. He's now got an opportunity here at Eastleigh with a decent budget as well. And for me, overall, I'm quite excited by this appointment, in my opinion. And, I'm glad they haven't gone down the route as well of another potential route that I thought they may have done, is going down the same old managers that are, out of jobs, for example. No disrespect to any of these, but going to similar sized clubs, for example, Yeovil just sacking Mark Cooper. They could have easily probably gone down the route of bringing in Mark Cooper. It feels disrespectful putting Mark Cooper and Matt Taylor in the same sentence, but Matt Taylor was available, if you get what I mean. They could have gone and appointed him once again at a name as such. That is so disrespectful to Mark Cooper, but you get what I mean anyway. Ben Strevens, the same names that are currently available at the moment that, have managed in this division before but haven't particularly achieved anything. Well, although Mark Cooper has, I'm kind of waffling now anyway, but you kind of get what I mean, if that makes sense. And I think they've kind of gone for a left field appointment potentially, and I think this could be the catalyst for change at Eastleigh, in my opinion.
No, I completely agree. And a fresh set of eyes on it, coming outside of the league. Scott Bartlett would have known about National League, about the players. He'd have done his homework and his due diligence like they would have done on him. And no, good appointment. Let's just hope, for his sake and Eastleigh's sake, that he can sort of wake them up a little bit and see where they go from there. But they're heading in the right direction. Talk about managers, Lou. It surprises me that Solihull still haven't replaced Matt Taylor, and obviously Sutton United recently sacked Steve Morrison. They've got no managers. So those two teams, and they are struggling for form. They're struggling for confidence. They're struggling for points, and they've still got no managers in there either. So that's not going to be helping any of those, any of their players or any of their sort of performances in the short term, I don't suppose.
No, it won't. And what isn't good is that there's other clubs managerless as well. So, for example, Solihull having to compete with Sutton, for a manager, they could both be looking at the same, manager to bring in, which just kind of, extends the backlog of being able to find their own manager. And potentially, we don't know this, but the new Eastleigh manager, Sutton and Solihull may have been looking at as well. And that might be the reason that they haven't been able to appoint them, because they've only found out in the last day or so that, they've not got their target, if that makes sense. So it's an awful situation to be in at this time of the season, because, there's still potential. You kind of rushing to find an appointment to be able to get your side back on track, because, Solihull and Sutton are both wanting the playoffs, and at the moment they're lower mid-table, potentially even in the drop zone. So they need to get on a good run of form quickly, which means they're rushing to try find this manager, and they're probably trying to find the perfect one, and it's just going to be very difficult in their current position. In terms of the transfer news, though, in the National League, 2 transfers were made in the last week. Olomo, I think that's how you'll know better than me. Of course, previously been at Wealdstone, he's re-signed for the club. What's your thoughts on that, signing the striker?
Oh, listen, fella played for us a couple of seasons ago. He played well enough that He got his move to Bromley in the National League and then went into the EFL with them in League Two and did appear for them at times in League Two. Probably didn't play as much as he wanted to. There's been rumblings all sort of pre-season. Would fella come back and play for Wealdstone? Many wouldn't know, but he's very local to where Wealdstone are based. He's played for local teams at Harrow. He actually played in the same youth team as a couple of lads who actually watch Wealdstone from the terraces. So, he's local to where we're based at the Vale. And I think that's always a bit of a draw, hopefully for him. Clearly, he didn't probably have a huge amount of suitors and clubs to go to. And, Wealdstone had to be patient. There's no two ways about it, Luke. Wealdstone are a centre forward away from being possibly a comfortable mid-table team. We're scoring goals at the moment and it's being shared out, but Wealdstone do need a centre forward. That Alex Reid, the Reece Brown, even Josh Umerers of this world. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like Shauna Dark was going to be that man that we need. We did have Nathan Young-Coombs, who's come in on a short-term deal, who's got injured. So we're very, very short up top. And so to get Fella in is a really, really nice signing for us. Is he due? Is he that person that can score 15, 20 goals? The jury's out, but I think, what he may offer on the field compared to what we do play up top at the moment is probably that little bit more. So, like I said, centre forwards play on confidence. We need to get him games. We need to get him minutes. He needs to start, getting a goal early on. And you never know. He may be that lad that gets us 10, 15 goals this season and is the difference between us struggling to go up and not. But, a good signing for us, a player we know, and it'd be nice to see him back at the Vale and hopefully, he does a bit for us in the time he's with us.
Morecambe themselves have made another addition that I do believe might actually take them up to a 30-man squad now. And this certainly is a name for the National League. A massive drop-off from being an ex-Premier League player at Newcastle. Ronaldo Aarons has signed for Morecambe, recently been playing in Slovenia. And he's actually scored in a Champions League qualification stage this season, I believe. So Morecambe have got themselves a player that's been playing in Champions League qualifiers. And, of course, he's got loads of experience across the Football League, as high up as the Premier League, in fact. And the only concern for me with this signing, like a lot of players who drop down from significantly higher divisions, is there's a reason for that. And a major reason with Ronaldo Aarons has been his awful injury record in the past, which, if I'm being honest, I think has probably wrecked his career in a way so far.
Yeah, I mean, Morecambe, I think the conundrum they've got on what we spoke about last week is that the manager now needs to know what his best squad is, what his best 11 is, what his best 15 are. They beat Wealdstone last Saturday. I wasn't in the country. I didn't see the game, but that they let a 3-goal lead slip to take it to 3-3 and then scored to win 4-3. And I think some of that was the doing of the Wealdstone defensive frailties at times, rather than maybe the Morecambe sort of way of attacking. But and then they don't follow that up and they go and lose in the week. And they've got to. He's really got to decide now what his best 15, 16 is, Luke. And he's drawing more and more players in every week, which is great. You can't stockpile them forever. You need to make sure they're effective, and that's where their new gaffer, Mr. Singh, needs to sort of earn his money now and get some points on the board, because it's all well and good being exciting and scoring goals and letting goals in, but if you're still in the bottom 4 or 5, that's not going to cut the mustard, at the end of the season when fans are looking at it. And, they may look at it slightly differently because they didn't have a football team to support at the beginning of the season, but I don't think they're going to want to be dropping into the National League North. So they need points on the board. He needs to work out what he's got. He's certainly drawing quality in. There's no two ways about that, but he's got to get them playing as a team.
With some of the names in that squad now, I think there's actually an expectation for them to survive this season. I think they will have failed, which might sound a little harsh considering that they didn't actually know that they were going to have a football team before a ball was kicked. But considering the amount of players that they've brought in, and on paper, players that in the past have had excellent ability and there's a lot of potential within the squad there, they should be surviving quite comfortably this season. Of course, a lot of these players coming in haven't played for a long time, have had bad injuries, but I still feel there's an expectation for them to survive. What I will say as well, when I've watched them play, you see some of the individual football that they do at times, some of the passing play that they do, and it's very nice to watch, and it's very impressive as well. You can see the style that they're wanting to, what Singh's wanting to implement there in terms of that, nice on-the-ground football. The concerns at the moment is that they're starting games well, and then as the game goes on, they're tiring. And, I think he's come out and said that over the course of the season, the squad will get back up to full fitness, which likely will happen because, like I've mentioned, a lot of these players haven't been playing football for a long time. But I think that was a clear indication against Halifax as well. They took an early lead, potentially could have been 2-0 up, maybe even 3-0 up at half time. And then the second half came around and it was just completely vice versa. Halifax absolutely dominated in every area and Morecambe tired. And, Halifax actually came back and managed to win that game 2-1.
Yes, like I said, he seems to have drawn on players that probably haven't played a massive amount of football or first team football or competitive football. So that's another challenge. I know they're full time, but you don't want to be playing catch up and doing your pre-season while the season's going on. But listen, he seems sensible enough. He's got his little black book of contacts. He's working very well with that. He just needs to formulate something he knows that will work, and I'm pretty sure that they will, Luke. I'm not convinced. I know we had them in the bottom four because I think we thought they weren't actually going to start the season, but I'm not convinced that they're going to be a team that are going to be in the bottom four come the end of the season. So once he's hit upon his right formation and his right mix, I think they'll be okay, and a good team to watch because they've got some fantastic footballers on their books.
Over 60 people currently watching at the moment. Please remember to like and subscribe. You don't actually have to go to the description now to check out our sponsors' cards accepted. There's a QR code in the top right-hand corner of the screen. You get 50% off your card machine, no contracts or monthly fees. Also, we've currently got a match day vlog of pitch side access of the York City versus Carlisle United game available to channel members on YouTube. It's just £2.99 a month, and you get early access to exclusive interviews that we do, and of course exclusive videos too. You get to use custom emojis in the live chat for your required football team too as well, and that is just £2.99 a month. That matchday vlog will become available to everyone publicly tomorrow at 10 a.m. if you don't want to become a channel member. We're going to get on with the predictions now. If you'd like to play along, this is how you do so. First game that we're going to preview then, get your predictions in the comments, guys, is Boreham Wood versus Woking. A big contrast in how both teams are currently performing at the moment. Boreham Wood currently sit 4th place after promotion from the National League South. They've only had one defeat this season, which came on the opening day against Rochdale, of course, in midweek. They went away to Scunthorpe United and picked up a very impressive point there too. A lot of Scunthorpe fans as well, that I noticed on social media, were praising Boreham Wood, and I've not seen this before, for being one of the best footballing sides they've seen at Scunthorpe in over a decade. Boreham Wood, in previous years in the National League, have probably been in a similar position to what they're in at the moment in 4th place, but they've never been known as a good footballing side under Luke Garrard. And since they've got promoted from the National League South, they're getting this reputation for playing one of the nicest football in the National League, or even in a lot of clubs, what a lot of clubs fans have seen in a long time in general. They're coming against the working side, who currently sit 21st in the league. Of course, haven't won in 3 games.
No, I can only see one winner here, Luke. I've gone with Boreham Wood 2, Woking 0, and I think you're right. They're showing a huge level of consistency, Boreham Wood. A refreshingly level of consistency. And I know we talk about it almost every week, but I think Luke Garrard is really righting the wrongs of the last time they were in the National League. And he's trying to probably prove to himself as well as anybody else that he can still run a team in this league. And he is really certainly showing everyone what they should be, because they've been in the playoffs, they've gone deep in FA Cups in respect to the levels that they play at. So, fair play to Luke Garrard, because it was a scrap to get out of the National League South. He did it, and they've really kicked on, and they've recruited well. They've gone to players they trust. They just look like a very, very good, well-oiled machine at the moment. High on confidence, absolutely high on confidence. So, it's incredible that they are where they are, but I think they still will be in the back of their minds, Luke, saying how many points are they away from not getting relegated, rather than looking at a playoff push. At some point, that will tilt, and they'll be looking at trying to get into the playoffs. But at the moment, I'm pretty sure they'll be quite grounded and going, well, we're working our way towards being safe. Let's see where that takes us. So fair play to them. But on the flip side, you imagine Woking to be what Boreham Wood should be, and they're certainly not. And they really are. They're struggling for any sort of momentum, aren't they, at the moment, Woking? And I don't think that's going to change on the weekend. And I think Boreham Wood will comfortably win 2-0.
Yeah, not scoring many goals at all either, Woking at the moment. And, Boreham Wood, although they've improved their footballing style, they've still, one thing that has remained consistent with Boreham Wood in the last couple of years is that strong defence. They've not conceded many goals at all this season, just 12 goals conceded so far. And for Woking themselves, they've only scored 12, so they're going to struggle to get past that Boreham Wood back line. And on the forward side of things, I think Boreham Wood have certainly got some talented players in the likes of Sousa, Brunt, and Russian Norris up top too. For me, I can't remember. I think this is probably the best Boreham Wood side I've seen since the Shamanga days. And even then, going forward, they highly relied on the likes of Shamanga and Tyrone Marsh. And this season, they've got a lot of different options, which is quite scary for a lot of other sides in the National League. I'm going to go for Boreham Wood 3, Woking 0. Moving on to the next fixture, it will be Braintree Town versus Gateshead. 2 out-of-form sides at the moment. Gateshead haven't won in 7, I don't believe, themselves. Of course, they've lost the last 3 games in all competitions too. Braintree lost in midweek to Boston away from home. However, this season have had a few surprise results. Of course, beating Eastleigh in the previous game week, smashing Halifax on the opening day too. And was it Yeovil, I think, they beat as well? Or am I getting that mixed up too? For this fixture, though, it's against a side that's low on confidence, coming up against a Braintree side that have been very mixed and I think are likely to be down there. I'm actually going to go for a 1-1 draw. How do you see this going, Paul?
Bedstone's just asked, do you think Alan Armstrong's under pressure? And I think he's completely under pressure. They're not. We talk about them being a Jekyll and Hyde team. They're certainly more Jekyll than Hyde at the moment. They're just not pulling these performances out of the bag. They earlier in the season, right? They were sort of winning one, losing one, drawing one, losing one, whatever it may have been. They're just not doing it. And I think Alan Armstrong is under an awful lot of pressure. He hasn't got really any credit in the bank. Not his fault, but fans will look at that as being was it a cheap option, an easy option? I don't know. But yeah, I think if Gateshead wanted to be playing anybody, they needed to be playing someone like Braintree the weekend. I think Braintree will win 2-1. I think Braintree at home is a long way to come for Gateshead. We've seen Gateshead have really struggled either home or away, really. So I think Braintree will take advantage of that. Gateshead could turn up and drop them 5 or 6-0 and be the Gateshead we all know, or they could turn up and be the Gateshead we've seen more regularly than not. So I've gone with Braintree 2, Gateshead 1. And I think this is a real pivotal period for them as a football club and Alan Armstrong as a manager, especially in terms of where their season could end up. And I think once, if they were to get sucked into the relegation zone, etc., it might be really tough for them. And I can't see Alan Armstrong being kept on. But we'll wait and see for that. But for now, they're going to need to get a performance in, show a response for him as the manager and for themselves. Braintree are in exactly the same sort of position. They need points, and they're going to look at us and go, Gateshead are a good team to play at the moment. And I think Braintree will win 2-1.
I don't think this Gateshead side's particularly built for a relegation battle, in my opinion, if that makes sense. Therefore, I feel that they need to be getting into the mid-table positions as quickly as possible so they're not in that final third of the season being concerned about being sucked into the relegation zone, because a lot of the sides around them will have been there and done it come the end of the season. We know that, maybe a bit harsh at the moment on Wealdstone, but we know that potentially that if Wealdstone are down there the past 2 seasons, they know what it takes to survive, and even if it goes to the final day. Braintree expected to go down this season, but have had experience of being able to stay up in the past. Boston did the unthinkable last season. All these sides that potentially are expected to be down there have that experience of knowing how to survive. Gateshead, in the last couple of years, haven't particularly had any experiences of being in a relegation battle. Even the season they came up, in the final third, they got onto a good run of form, I think, by that point, where the last couple of games, they were more or less safe. Now, for me, I think for Gateshead, they need to be getting into the mid-table positions as quickly as possible and away from that relegation zone, because when it comes to the final 10 games or so, do they have the experience? Do they have a manager who knows how to survive in the National League rather than looking to, stabilise? For me personally, no. I don't know if you agree with that, Paul, or not, or maybe I'm just waffling there.
No. I think that's a fair point, and I suppose that's what I was sort of alluding to a little bit when I talked about them. If they keep dropping, are they going to find that a struggle? And that's why it's quite pivotal, because, like you said, there's teams down there that are used to being down there. The likes of Gateshead, they're not. They're used to being in the top 6, 7, 8, 9. So, how are they built for a scrap? Is Alan Armstrong the man to get them through that scrap? I think the next 2 or 3 games will determine that, I believe. But for now, I think it's a fair comment that a team like that could end up just sinking because they're just not used to what they're doing.
Well, I always mention it. We've seen what's happened to Dagenham last season. We've seen what's happened to Yeovil. We've seen what's happened to who are the other side, who kind of Boreham Wood, even, when they actually went down. I think the previous season before that, they'd finished in the playoffs, and then they got relegated the season afterwards. And that's because all of those sides hadn't had previous experiences of being in relegation battles in the National League. I think Luke Garrard even mentioned the time that Boreham Wood went down. He was a little naive to being in a position like that. And obviously, didn't at the. I think it's hard to always plan for a relegation battle at the start of the season, but I don't think he ever thought that his side would be in a relegation battle at the start of the season. And I think for me, when I look at Gateshead and a lot of their fan base at the start of the season, it felt like they feel that the worst position for them is going to be lower mid-table this season. And at the moment, the way they're playing, they've lost 7 games. They've not lost 7 games. They've not won in 7, I should say. I am quite concerned for them. And, I thought the start of the season I were quite concerned too as well. Anyway, moving on to the next fixture that we're going to have a look at. It will be Carlisle United versus Rochdale. Carlisle United need a reaction after that embarrassment on Tuesday night, losing by 5-0 till York. As for Rochdale, still going strong. Solihull Moors could have been seen as a bit of a potential banana skin after Solihull, of course, defeated York away from home. Yet Rochdale convincingly beat them by 4-1. How do you see this one going, Paul?
What a match for the league, eh? Yeah. What a match! I think someone posted on the on your Twitter feed that Carlisle, Rochdale, Forest Green, York in one game weekend is unbelievable. I thought, yes, there's got to be a response. We spoke about Carlisle at length just short time ago, rather. There's got to be a response from them. They are at home. It will be a big crowd, not a local derby, but Rochdale's not a huge million miles away, so they should take a fair whack of fans as well. Listen, I can see goals being in this without a doubt, and I've gone with quite a bold Carlisle 2, Rochdale 4, which I look like Ben has agreed with me.
I can kind of see why, to be fair, because the thing is how I think, and this sounds stupid, but the way I think Carlisle have to approach this game is potentially by outscoring Rochdale, because I think they're bound to concede goals against Rochdale with their attack if they're given opportunities. Like Manny D. Thruway will bully Carlisle United's defence. Devante Rodney's got the pace behind that's faster than both centre-halves. Alarakia, I think Mancini's injured now, but, the list goes on of quality going forward for Rochdale. And the only thing Carlisle United can do for me is potentially outscore Rochdale. So I'm hoping that it is going to be quite an open match. But based on the balance of Rochdale, which I think is crucial, and I mentioned about the York game, and from what I saw against Carlisle, I think Rochdale may win this game 2-1 at the moment. I know Carlisle United are back at home. They've got attackers that could potentially hurt Rochdale, but Rochdale have got a pretty strong defence themselves and a pretty good core of a team overall. So I think Rochdale may win this game 2-1, but, I could see your prediction 4-2. Maybe not coming in, but I think something stupid or a bit of a freak result like that could potentially happen, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. Rochdale can score goals. We've seen that in the week. They scored a lot. Carlisle can let goals in. We've seen that, but they can score goals. So it'll probably end up being 0-0, mate. But who knows? It's a bold 4-2 win for Rochdale.
Moving on to the next fixture that we're going to have a look at, it will be my team, FC Halifax Town, coming up against the Shots. Of course, for Aldershot, disappointing result in midweek, losing to Yeovil by 4-1. Of course, for Halifax themselves, a good win in midweek for them too.
Yeah, listen. Their manager, I think Joe from On the Line blog has sort of mentioned about the appointment of Adam. His name's got out of my head. Your new gaffer at Halifax, in terms of a good steady appointment, a clever appointment, and hopefully he can start getting himself just together a little bit more confidence, a bit of consistency, and Aldershot, we know, are susceptible to scoring letting goals in, but can score goals. I've actually gone with a 3-3 draw on this one, Luke. But we'll have to wait and see in terms of how Aldershot respond to the amount of goals they let in the week, whether they will shore it up a little bit. But Halifax are going to be buoyed by the fact they won in the week, and I've gone with a 3-3 draw.
do apologise if any of you heard the loud music in the background. Then you might not have all. Well, I think you will have done, to be honest. That's just uni life for you, I suppose. But anyway, moving on. Hopefully they're gone now. But anyway, moving on to this fixture from my perspective, Halifax versus the Shots. I'm pretty confident, to be fair. I think we've got a bit of momentum now. The one concern is, we're giving teams early leads. For example, Morecambe and Gateshead, they both took the lead in the first half, and we came back in both fixtures for me. So I just hope that we start well against Aldershot. And of course, we are going to get opportunities because Aldershot are quite an open side defensively. As for Halifax, I think they're looking a lot better in recent weeks, as I've mentioned. So I'm actually going to go for a 2-1 Halifax win. Moving on to the next fixture that we're going to have a look at, it is going to be Hartlepool United versus Tamworth. The battle of two strong defences, I suppose, so far this season. I'm pretty confident Hartlepool will get the job done, being at home, of course. Got back to winning ways in midweek, beating Gateshead. I'm going to go for a 2-0 Hartlepool win. How do you see it going?
Oh, I've gone for a 1-0 Hartlepool win. I think you're right. A low-scoring game. Tamworth have got to go to a strong Hartlepool side. They're quite attritional themselves. I'm not sure it's going to be the prettiest match in the National League this weekend, Luke. I certainly don't think it'll be the most goals. Hartlepool have got to just start trying to win games. I think playing Tamworth for them is a good fixture to have. But listen, Tamworth are still holding their own. Drew with Wealdstone rather in the week. After going 1-0 down, managed to claw it back and get another point on the board. So they're hanging in there. They're holding their own. But I just think, like you, Hartlepool will just be that little bit too strong, but not a lot of goals. So I've gone with 1-0 to Hartlepool.
Moving on to the next fixture that we'll have a look at, it will be Solihull Moors versus Brackley Town. Potentially a bit of a derby, this one. I think both, obviously, from Birmingham. Brackley, like we said, they've had an excellent start to the season themselves, haven't they, this year? Solihull Moors, although they got that win at York City, losing to Rochdale away from home, potentially no shame in that. But I suppose if Solihull are wanting to be this playoff team, then they kind of is. I think there's just that the expectations for them have significantly lowered, and that's why we're saying that it's not disappointing that they've actually lost to Rochdale. I'm actually going to go for a Brackley win. I just think they've got the confidence at the moment. They're hard to break down. I'm going to go for a 1-0 Brackley win. How do you see it going?
I've gone with the 1-1 draw. A bit like you, Lou. I don't see Brackley losing. That again, they're doing amazingly well. They really are holding their own in this league. There was always that fear that they wouldn't score enough goals to sort of hang on in there, but they seem to be doing it and managing their performances well enough to get results. So I just, Solihull at home. Yeah, okay. I know they got drubbed in the week. I just can't see either team winning this game and it not being particularly high scoring. So that's why I've gone with a 1-1 draw.
Moving on to the next fixture that we'll have a look at then, it will be Southend versus Scunthorpe. This is another mouthwatering tie, I feel, overall. Scunthorpe have had an excellent start themselves. As for Southend, certainly been a mixed start overall, losing in midweek. We've had a few disappointing results, yet to be defeated at home this season. Do you think that could happen this game week?
No. I've gone with Southend 3, Scunthorpe 2. Probably a bit of a weird one as well. But no, listen, they've got to react. Southend have got to react. I don't think their fans are hugely enamored with the start they had, have they? I think they lost to Wealdstone Vale. They lost in the week. I don't think they've been playing particularly well from what I gather reading on social media. And at some point that has got to change. I mean, there was a comment here. I was just trying to find it. One of our listeners is a Southend fan and said, "Oh, Lee Harley said they can have thought about Solihull having them. So, there's certainly fans aren't hugely enamoured by them at the moment.
That's silly. If I'm being honest, I just think it's silly because everyone was saying this time last year about Southend, and then they were literally 15 minutes away from going to the Football League, and Kevin Mayer would be back to be known as this icon for Southend, and I actually think he is, to be honest, with everything that he's done there. So I do find it quite. I don't know. Everyone's got their own opinion, but for me, I just think it's so harsh, to be honest.
But Luke, listen. Put this in perspective, okay? Yes, they were 15 minutes from the Football League after what they've been through. Completely understand that. York came second with 96 points and sacked their manager after 4 games. The owners and ownership groups and board of directors, whoever it is that make these decisions, will only give you credit for so long. And if we look at the Southend ownership, you personally met them and spoken to them. They want to move this club forward. Will they look at it and say, "Has Kevin Mayer taken them as far as they can?" Is he under any serious pressure? As mentioned here by Bedstone, it'd be difficult to see him not being under pressure if they don't start picking up results.
They are in the top set. The thing is that I know you've mentioned that about Adam Hinchelwood, but I think that were more things behind the scenes rather than the actual first 4 games for me overall. Of course, it was known that I think you were wanting to leave in the summer. And as for Southend's current position, they are still 7th in the league. They're in the playoffs. It's not like they're down 15th, 16th place.
No, I agree. But then if they were down in 16th, 17th place, Kevin Mayer would not be manager now, end of. Because Southend fans don't want to see their team in 16th, 17th place. They had to 2 or 3 seasons ago because they had no players and they were in embargoes and no training ground with no hot water and all that sort of stuff. Southend don't really have an awful lot of excuses now, Luke, to be able to perform and get. And will Kevin Mayer be a victim of his own success? Possibly. Has Kevin Mayer taken him as far as he can? Possibly. And I think, as much as we talk about Alan Armstrong with Gateshead going the wrong way, Southend, although they're not dropping, they're not knocking on the door as much as I think fans would have wanted them to with 10 or 11 games in, especially off the back of what they did last season. And I think, and don't correct me if I'm wrong, and Southend fans, if you're watching or listening, is it the performances that are a little bit troublesome as much as the results? Sometimes fans can swallow it a little bit and go, well, they played really well there, they competed really well, they were just unlucky, they made this mistake. A bit like Wealdstone fans do, as an example. If you see the performances are there, then the results may come. If the performances aren't there, then results aren't coming, then that's even more challenging for them. So I don't want to see Kevin Mayer. So I don't want to see any manager sat, a bit like you, Luke. And I get your sentiment about where they were last season, but you've also got to look at the size of Southend, where they want to be, where they expect to be, what their fans want them to be. That's an awful lot of pressure for any manager. So, I think he could be under a little bit of pressure if their performances don't improve and their points don't improve. I think they will win Saturday, but because they have to and they're at home. But Scunthorpe are going to give them a really good game.
For me, I think with Southend as a club for them, and it might lack ambition considering the size of the club. They should be. Some may say they should be looking to compete for the title with York and Rochdale and potentially Carlisle. But for me, overall, all they need to do is be in the top 7, and I think they've got a very good chance of promotion because of the way they play. They will play better against the better sides because of that type of football under Kevin Mayer, and that his style of football isn't going to change in the time period he's been there. And like I've said, I'm confident Southend will be in the top 7 come the end of the season. And if they are, I think they're in a very good position to be able to win the playoffs. I still think they're a better side than what they were last season. They haven't lost anyone significant, and I think they've added to that. But the way they play is going to mean that they're going to draw a lot of games. But I still think, they sit 7th in the league at the moment. They're on level points of York City. If they win the game in hand, they're only 6 points off top. I don't think it's all doom and gloom at Southend at the moment, in my opinion. And like I said, I think if they're in the top 7 come the end of the season, I'm pretty confident that they'll give the playoffs a good go and be in a lot better position than some of the other sides come the end of the season. In terms of my actual prediction for this game, I'm actually going to go for a 1-1 draw. People have said I've given Scunthorpe a lot of unnecessary hate and not hate, I don't think. I probably haven't appreciated, what they're doing at the moment. Of course, they currently sit 5th in the league after promotion. I thought Boreham Wood would win there on Tuesday. But to be fair to Scunthorpe, they managed to pick up a result against them. Away at Southend, I think they've got so much momentum and confidence at the moment. I think they might be able to pick a result up there. And I'm actually going to go for a 1-1 draw for this fixture. Moving on to the next fixture that we're going to have a look at, it is going to be Sutton United versus Boston United. One of the more underwhelming games, I suppose, of the game week. Both sides have had tricky start. Well, not the most ideal starts to the season. Of course, Sutton have let the manager go. As for Boston, currently down there themselves. How do you see this one going, Paul?
Listen, Sutton are in a world of bother, aren't they? We talked about last year consolidating. Steve Morrison did that, swapped his squad around, did okay, came into this season, felt they could then kick on, and it's been an utter disaster for them. I suppose Sutton are at home. They don't have a manager yet. Doesn't look like they may have a manager until they arrive down at their ground on Saturday, unless one gets appointed tomorrow. I've gone with a Boston 2-0 win. I mean, there's a lot of love for Sutton in the predictions, and their fortunes have to change at some point. But I think Boston just in that little bit better run of form, and listen, they beat Braintree on Saturday or in the week, which is good. They're going to look at this again and say this is a result we need to win if we want to stay in the league. You've almost got to look at a mini league at the bottom of the table and think, who is it we can beat in and around us? And at the moment, Boston have got to look at this and say, this is a game we need to win. I know Boston aren't brilliant, and they're in a bit of a transition. Their second season syndrome may kick in a little bit. They may get found out by teams. But I think Sutton are in such a wretched run of form. They don't have a manager. And I think that will harm them on Saturday, and Boston win 2-0.
I've gone for a 2-1 Boston win for similar reasons to you. They haven't got a manager. They've had 1 win in 11 games all season. Quite concerning times for Sutton, to be honest. And it's quite a massive shame because there was so much optimism going into this season, wasn't there, about Sutton being a bit of a dark horse for the playoffs. But I am actually going to go for a 2-1 Boston win, I should say. Moving on to the next fixture that we're going to have a look at. It is going to be Truro versus Morecambe. This is quite an interesting game as well for me. I think two sides that I get the impression, well, I've seen Morecambe, they like to play football. Truro seem to be liking to play a nice style of football, yet they've been poor in both boxes. It's a long way for Morecambe fans to go, and they are needing to start picking up results in the National League. I think this will be quite an entertaining one. I'm going to go for a 3-2 Morecambe win. How do you see it going?
3-1. Gone 3-1, Luke. I think the quality Morecambe have, even though we don't know whether he's got his best mix, is going to be too much for Truro. I mean, Morecambe put 4 past Wealdstone on.
Oh dear. I think Paul's had some internet issues, so it looks like he's gone for the time being. So we'll just wait for him to come back. Hopefully he isn't too long. Let us know your predictions in the comments. Harry's come in and said 3-2 to Truro. Lee said 1-0 to Truro. We've had a 1-1 prediction. Truro 1-1, 2-1. Rory's also coming and said Boreham Wood, very good side, best we've seen this season at Scunny. Sorry, just joined. Like I've said, Boreham Wood have really surprised me in the style of football they've played this season. But Paul is back as with us now. Take it away.
I don't know what the hell happened there. The internet dropped out. I was chatting to myself. Apologies, those. I don't know what you got to, but I said, Morecambe put 4 past Wealdstone Saturday.
Yeah.
I think Wealdstone are fairly resilient. So, to do that is pretty good. I think Morecambe just have that quality and will win 3-1.
Moving on to the next fixture that we'll have a look at. I believe it is Yeovil versus Altrincham. Wealdstone versus Eastleigh, I should say. For Wealdstone, probably not a good time to play in Eastleigh. Got a victory in midweek against Southend. A new manager in charge with a good reputation. The way Wealdstone have played this season, though, particularly at home, they've been very, very strong. And I think it'll be quite an entertaining one once again here. I think it is a bit of a mouth-watering game week. I think it'll be a 2-2 draw. How do you see it going?
I know Bedstone's not going to like this. I've gone with Wealdstone 1, Eastleigh 3.
Backing against your own side.
I know, and at the Vale, but I just got a gut feel that Eastleigh are going to be bang up for it. They've got a new manager. They've got a potent forward line that's there waiting to be unleashed. We missed Jack Cook in the week. I don't know whether he'll be back. Alfie Massey's got injured in the week. We don't know whether his hamstring is damaged or not. Yes, we got a fella coming back. Listen, we're a strong physical side. I think Wealdstone just are currently struggling with not really being as good as they could be in both boxes, if that makes sense. We play very good football. We do keep the ball. We do compete, between the boxes. It's just in the defending box and obviously the attacking box. We went to Tamworth in the week, and it was a better performance than that against Morecambe, granted. But we scored. Nathan Shakuna scores a really good goal, and then not even 5 minutes later, I think we let a goal in. And then you see 2 chances that are missed that could seal the points for us, and they're not taken. And we're just lacking that bit of quality, bit of decisiveness, bit of ownership in both boxes. And I think that what will undo us at the weekend.
Moving on to the second to last fixture, it is now Altrincham versus Yeovil. As for Yeovil, good win in midweek, of course, winning against Aldershot away from home. We've spoken about them in quite a lot of detail tonight. As for Altrincham, though, themselves, 3 defeats on the bounce, but the fixtures haven't been kind to them as of late. They've had to play the likes of Carlisle in that time, Forest Green Rovers, and of course a Boreham Wood side that are flying near the top at the moment. So potentially this could be seen as a more winnable game, although it is a very long journey. New manager, not a new manager, a temporary manager in charge for Yeovil. I think this will be a 1-1 draw. How do you see it going?
2-2 draw. Gone with another draw as well. I think. Listen, Yeovil are going to be buoyed by the fact that they managed to win so convincingly in the week. Again, they're at home. Hopefully, Hewish Park will be up for it. A good footballing game. This, I think, Altrincham. Yeah, I mean, they haven't been quite as good as they probably would want to have been the last couple of games. But I think this will be a draw. So I've gone 2-2.
Moving on to the final fixture of the game week, and I suppose it is the game of the game week too. Forest Green Rovers versus York City, live on DAZN. The game of the season so far, I think Tuesday night was, but now this certainly is. Forest Green, who currently sit top, coming up against the favourites before a ball was kicked. York recently, particularly on Tuesday night, back in form after a 5-0 victory against Carlisle United. Could York City be the first side this season to defeat Forest Green Rovers?
No. I've gone with a 3-3 draw.
I've gone for a 2-2 draw myself. I just can't split the two sides. You can't really back against York after winning 5-0 in midweek against Carlisle, and I don't think you can back against Forest Green on the form they're currently on themselves at the moment. Of course, alongside Scunthorpe, the only side yet to be defeated this season.
Yeah, I mean, what a great football match for the zone and for the league. Whether they knew that these two teams would be near the top when they picked this, I have no idea. But a great football match. Both two teams banging form. Both managers like possession-based football with the ability to be able to get forward and harm and create, not just keeping the ball for the sake of it. York proved they can deal with a forward line that's got real quality, like Carlisle's did, and keep a clean sheet. What you don't want is someone is the York City that huffed and puffed against Solihull and ultimately lost the game, albeit through a bit of a bad goal to let in, sort of thing. So you don't want that. And Robbie Savage will have them bang up for it down at their ground, and he'll be ramping their fans up and all that sort of thing. You know what it's like. So I think a very entertaining 3-3 draw.
Do you think this is the first real major test for Forest Green then this season? Of course, they've had a lot of difficult situations in terms of going to places like Halifax, where it could have probably gone either way. 1-0 down against Scunthorpe, a late equaliser, a very, very late equaliser, keeping their unbeaten run going. And even Altrincham, at times Altrincham, got the equaliser, and it could have potentially have gone either way until later on, where I think Forest Green did get on top with that second goal. But they've been in different situations, and to be fair, whenever we have backed against them, or maybe more me in terms of going for the odd draw, they have always kind of proved us wrong, or myself wrong so far this season. But I do feel now, like Carlisle, this is the real test for Forest Green Rovers, coming up against one of the, I think, other 4 sides who are expected to be within this title race this season before a ball, but based on probably the start of the season in terms of results. But I do feel like the way Forest Green Rovers have played, the way they are as a squad, and from what I've seen and the balance across the field, I think they are adjusted to be able to compete with York, unlike potentially what Carlisle were. And as for York, away from home, they've got loads of momentum after Tuesday night. And under Stuart Maynard, I have to say, it feels like he's just, taken off from where Hinchelwood was, to be honest. I think there were a few things about Maynard coming in from certain sections of the supporters after losing Hinchelwood. But to be honest, with that talent of a squad, I think Maynard's in just as good position, if not a better position, to get the best out of that squad than Adam Hinchelwood was. And so far, apart from that defeat to Solihull, I think he certainly has got the best out of them. So like I've said, this is a mouth-watering clash, and I just can't split them. So I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw myself. Anything to finally add, Paul?
No, I mean, what a game week, because you got, obviously, as you say, Carlisle, Rochdale, Forest Green, York, and Southend, Scunthorpe. But you got to look at the bottom there, Luke.
Yeah.
Truro, Morecambe, Sutton, Boston, Solihull, Brackley. So there's some really good games at both ends of the table, and it's starting to really shape up now. And we can see what teams are doing, what we probably expect them to be doing, and what they should be doing. I don't know. Do we go 1 week in the last 3 or 4 where there's no manager sack? We'll have to wait and see on that one. We might be talking about more manager sackings and managers leaving next week. There was mention Wealdstone have potential financial backing coming into play in the next couple of days. They've got an emergency general meeting with the shareholders, which many of those are fans, in terms of some investment. That may be a real fillip for the football club, and that could be maybe discussed in more detail in the future. But that's looking good for Wealdstone. But no, listen, Chris Clark's still available. Will he end up in the National League? So I think after this weekend, we'll certainly have a lot to talk about what's happening on the field, but there'll be probably lots to talk about off the field as well.
I 100% agree. I don't think we haven't had a game week, have we yet? Apart from the first couple, where we haven't talked about any managerial departures, or at least talk about potential replacements. It's been absolutely mental. So hopefully next week's 1 week where we don't have to kind of talk about managerial sackings, and you'd like to think potentially Solihull and Sutton and maybe even Yeovil now will have found replacements for their managers too. But no, thanks, Paul, once again for joining me. Thanks to everyone that's tuned in tonight. I do really appreciate the support. Please remember to like and subscribe. It genuinely does go a long way, and you will not miss an episode if you are subscribed, as you'll be alerted when we do go live or a new episode is airing. If you'd like to become a channel member, it is just £2.99 a month. You get early access to interviews and videos that we do, including the York City versus Carlisle United pitchside vlog. Of course, that will be accessible to everyone tomorrow morning. And you also get to use custom emojis in the live chat for your specific football club too. I think that's more or less everything. Check out Cards Accepted, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.